Okay. What's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. Episode 491. I know I don't usually like to repeat games each week on Hanging with Mangg, but really the only game I've been playing in my free time has been Elden Ring. Because I'm trying to do like 100% completion run of it. And it turns out it's a really big game. It takes many hours to 100% complete. But, you know, I didn't really 100% it my first time through. I think I did pretty well, but not 100%. But now I have this mod where it shows me, like, every item in the map in the whole game. And that makes it a lot easier to find everything. So I want, you know, just like a really good save file going into the DLC. Although apparently, and this is based on a TikTok comment, so I don't know, I didn't look into it any further. But according to the comment, Miyazaki said that the DLC will have sort of a Sekiro-style leveling system. So that you'll have to, like, really the only way to get stronger is to beat the bosses and keep going through it. So it doesn't really matter, like, how strong you are going in. I don't know really how they can do that for a DLC in, like, a meaningful way. But we'll see. Either way, I'd rather be prepared than not prepared. But it's been good so far. You know, I've been mostly doing, like, an Unga Bunga strength build. Like, I was using the Guts Greatsword for a while. And I might go back to that. Now, you know, I'm using the really cheese Blasphemous Blade build. But, you know, with the DLC, like, I want really flexibility. Because I want to try out a lot of different weapons. So I'll probably end up with some sort of quality build, which isn't ideal. But I mean, if you go in at level 500, you can just have everything at, you know, at 80 stats, and you can just do whatever. So I don't know. Anywho, this is mostly what I've been playing. Along with some Helldivers 2 with some friends. That's been fun now that they've sorted out the server issues. It's been pretty good. Apparently we're getting vehicles and mechs pretty soon. And that's going to be just insane. So that's great. And, you know, we've been playing a little bit of Overwatch, too. Not a whole... I mean, Helldivers is really kind of taking over our game time at night. I've also been playing... I've been recording a new LP. not exactly a new game. A few years old, and it's a game that I picked specifically because it's coming to Archipelago. But it's a game called Astalon Tears of the Earth. It's a 2D Metroidvania with some elements of a roguelite in there, and some elements of the Lost Vikings in there. It's a game that I think is going to be really, really good in Archipelago. So I've been playing through that. And also, I started recording some tabletop simulator videos for a very exciting new game called Dragons Down, which is a modern game inspired by Magic Realm. I'm very excited about it. I went in on the Kickstarter for like 300 bones. Serious stuff. And it's all on Tabletop Simulator, so there's definitely going to be some videos for that coming. For those that like the TTS stuff. Aside from that, on Two Brothers Play, Lego and I last night finished our latest run of Archipelago. We had 4 games up, and we finished 3 of them. Lego was doing StarCraft 2, we finished. I finished 2 of my 3. Time Spinner, the length of that when I'm doing multiple games can really kind of get out of hand, actually. Just because it's so easy to get BK'd in that game. And I just spent a lot of time just leaving it to the side, and then once you get un-BK'd, it's like, oh shit, I got so much to do still. So yeah, it didn't work out. But for those that are not that interested in Archipelago, but would like to check out the stream, I have good news. Our next game will not be randomized. We're going to be checking out Secrets of Grindia, which is a 2D action RPG with a lot of, like, RPG mechanics. Apparently it's been in development for, like, 13 years. Apparently a lot of people knew of this game's existence within the last 13 years. I don't know, I never heard of it. But now it's officially released, and it's, like, built in many ways for co-op. So we're going to check it out. That's pretty much all that. Over on the Exploring series, I released a video on Slaanesh, which, yeah, didn't do that well last time I checked. Kind of just reaffirming my decision here. This week I worked on a new SCP, a big one. Well, not new, but a pretty big one. The Rhino Cannon. Which is, you know, it's a Site 43 SCP, the achromatic abatement section, but with some time fuckery. Things go wrong. So, yeah, I mean, it was a good one. Quite complicated. Definitely one of those where I do an extensive explanation at the end. It's about an hour long. And then this week I'll be doing another 40K video. One of the last ones. I want to say it's one of the armament videos. Maybe? Armament of the Tau, maybe? I don't know. I think the last 4 are Armaments of the Tau, Armaments of the Necron, Fulgrim, and... oh, God, what is the last one? Maybe I should just check real quick while I'm sitting here. Fulgrim, Magnus the Red, Armaments of the Necrons, Armaments of the Tau. And this week's video will be Armaments of the Necrons. And then it'll all be done. So that's 2 more months. 2 more months before 40k is done. Unless some multi-part SCP thing comes up and it gets bumped a little, but... yeah, actually, I mean, that's... with the 8k contest, that's probably reasonably possible. We'll see. It'll wrap up. And... I was thinking, and this is not set in stone, it was just like a thought. I was like, well, maybe this could be something. Creepypasta, right? Creepypasta's been around for a long time. SCP is essentially born out of creepypasta. Because creepypasta, I think, is a stupid name that I have to live with. Because that's just what it's called. But really, it's just horror short stories on the internet. I mean, that's what creepypasta is. So, of course, SCP pretty much is a collection of horror short stories on the internet that has developed into non-horror and things like that. So it was born out of creepypasta. And when I first started SCP, as I've said before, I was a little unsure of it because up to that point, I had summarized lore. You know, I had taken, like, Lord of the Rings, and I had done videos on Gandalf, specifically, and the lore surrounding Gandalf. Like, I wasn't trying to tell any sort of story with the video. It was just lore summaries. And that's what I did, because that's how it started. You know, when I did my video on Cthulhu, most of that info about Cthulhu is essentially from the story Call of Cthulhu, with bits and pieces maybe taken from some other parts. But I wasn't just recounting the story of the Call of Cthulhu, I was doing a little lore summary on the entity. So when I got to SCP, I was a little unsure, because up to that point I had only done lore summaries, and I wasn't sure. At the time, all I knew about SCP was just the individual articles, and all the articles were kind of unique and different. And it's like, how am I going to summarize the lore of SCP? You know, taking like disparate sources and things like that and combining it into a lore video. Isn't it more just like reading each article? And I was partly right. There are videos I have done for SCP that I think are more of like a lore summary, like the group of interest stuff and things like that. But really I had to kind of just change my perspective over time, and it became more of just doing a retelling or a telling of specific articles, and, you know, throwing it in my own voice and doing a little explanation, summarization, stuff like that. I had to change the format. I'm getting to a point. Creepypasta. Now, in the past, I thought, when a few people have suggested I do some creepypasta, I thought, okay, well, I guess I could just do some readings of some creepypasta, like I've done some readings of Lovecraft's audio, his books. And I did Psychosis or whatever by Matt Demersky, and I mean, that was a really good short story that I read. I mean, it was an audiobook. It was good. But the thought that I had this week is like, why didn't I think to summarize or retell creepypasta the same way I do SCP articles? And I think the reason why not is because most creepypasta that I've looked at, the whole kind of point of them is to try and pass them off as real, in a sense. Like, they're written from that kind of perspective. They're written from, like, a first-person perspective of, this happened to me and I'm telling you about it. And so that's often, I think, what sort of lends the creepy nature to it, is you thinking about this actually happening to this person. Like, especially like in the early Wild West days, like when I was a youngin' and I read Ted the Caver. When I was first reading Ted the Caver, I did not think, like, wow, this is a really cool short story someone wrote. I thought, holy fuck, this happened to this dude and it's insane. Obviously, I know better now. But that was a big part of the appeal. And why I kind of read the whole thing. At the same time, I say that about SCP. That I think the big appeal of SCP is reading the article yourself. Much like reading anything, but that's because I tend to read stuff. And clearly, plenty of people don't mind a retelling. A slight, from a kind of a summarization perspective. And I don't think there's any other channel out there doing what I would do for creepypastas. I know there's plenty of reading channels. Much like when I came into SCP, there was plenty of SCP reading channels. So, I mean, the thought was, why don't I just do that for creepypasta, like, once a month or something, exploring creepypasta. I mean, I really, again, I hate saying that, but everyone knows what you mean when you say it. Whereas if I say exploring short horror stories on the internet, you sound like an ass. Honestly, my only major issue with such a plan is quality control. With SCP, there's a collection of quality authors putting out content. I know when certain names in the community put out an article, at the very least, I'm going to want to read it. When DJ Cactus puts out an article, I'm not saying necessarily that I know it's going to be good, but I know that I'm going to want to read it. When Rounder House puts out an article, I know I'm going to want to read it. When Metaphysician puts out an article, I'm going to want to read it. Things like that. I mean, and there's a lot of good authors. Harry Blank and Tufto and Random Day. I mean, there's yeah, I always hate to list authors because I always forget. I'm not good with names that much. Placeholder, of course. But with creepypasta, it's just kind of thrown out there onto like Reddit and stuff like that. And there are known authors, of course, within that world. But also, SCP has their rating system. So even if it's not an author I'm super familiar with, if it's got a good high rating, I know that a lot of people have liked it, and it's worth me checking out. Again, I guess Reddit has votes and things like that, and maybe it's not an issue, because I just haven't looked into creepypastas that much. But I don't know. I don't know. I also think they might tend to be shorter. I mean, clearly, it's quite common for me to be able to summarize an SCP article, and it ends up being an hour-long video in summary, or, you know, in, like, retell. Like, 2 hours if I read the whole thing. But creepypastas, I mean, that's got to be uncommon for them to be that long. But that's why I would do like once a month, just as kind of something different, something not restrained by the bounds of SCP. That can kind of just be its own thing, and everyone knows it's its own thing, sort of like that. It's just a thought I had that would kind of fall into the horror category that I'm in, the sort of narrative category that I want to be in. Stuff like that. I don't know. If anyone has any thoughts, feel free. So that's all that. This week on Solo Roll Mangg. You know, we started with... I was in the Centaur camp, the Band of the Iron Hoof. And, they had just told me that I was apparently a prophesized individual that was going to reunite their fractured faction of centaurs. And, you know, I had decided that the centaurs were fractured essentially due to their differing responses to the encroachment of humans from the Golden Union, with some of them wanting to just reject modernity and stay wild and free in the wilderness, embrace their horse side, which represents kind of their uncivilized side. And then the others wanted to not necessarily embrace humanity and civilization, but understood that it was their really only way forward for the survival of their species. So they were ready to become integrated in some fashion with modern society. Overall, I was really happy with this whole faction concept, and I hope that I get to run it for somebody else at some point. And so I had come all up with all that because I felt that it was very logical. It made a lot of sense for this to be the reason why there was a schism. That being said, I didn't really think about any of that from a player perspective. It was just logical. So, once all that was put in place, it's like, okay, how is Garland supposed to fix all that? How is he supposed to reunite them in a satisfactory way for both parties? And basically, I think it comes down to coming up with some accord that kind of guarantees the continued survival of the Centaurs, even in the wake of modernization. So, it wasn't that the one Centaur faction was really happy to see humans and were ready to, take part in an industrial revolution and start farming and going to tailors. They weren't like, that's not what they were really interested in. It's just that they felt and understood that path of being more civilized and being, accepting and acceptable was their best way to stay alive as a species and as a faction. So with that in mind, it's not really necessary for Garland to try and get them into cities and be like, hey, aren't centaurs cool? They're the coolest. You should like them because they're cool. It's more just finding some way to guarantee from like the Golden Union as a government that they're not gonna fuck with the centaurs. The centaurs aren't gonna fuck with them. Basically, come up with some sort of non-aggression pact, really, or some sort of like protected land. But Garland doesn't wield nearly enough political power to get close to something like that. So at the moment, he's kind of just impotent in that aspect. Which is not to say that he'll always be impotent there. He'll ideally eventually will gain plenty of political power. But, yeah, I just am not quite sure what I can do at the moment. At the moment, the civilized centaurs are trying to initiate some trading with some of the local towns, settlements, because the chieftain felt that was the best way to kind of be like, hey, centaurs are not they're not all evil raiding savages. They have goods. They're willing to, accept modern currency. They're willing to play nice. This, however, is being greatly upset by the fact that the other faction of centaurs are starting to now actively raid these settlements. Because they're like, get the fuck off our land. We're here to kick ass and take names and all that. And that really exacerbates the issue because humans, the average humans here, cannot really tell apart the two different factions. So anytime centaurs approach now, it's just like, holy shit, man the walls. So it's making the trading attempts very difficult to occur. It's a situation that I really like as like a DM, because I think it's very freeform. I think it's very sandboxy. This situation can go in any number of directions. And as a DM, I have no idea which direction it will go. So I think it's very exciting. That being said, if I were to present this situation to my family as players, I don't know what the fuck they would do. I feel like it wouldn't be a big hit. So I tried to convince the one faction, their chieftain. I tried to convince them to stop raiding for the moment. I did not roll well, and I didn't have really a convincing enough argument as to why they should stop raiding. Because pretty much my argument is like, hey, I'm the chosen one. I'm gonna figure all this out, so please stop raiding. Yeah, and I didn't come off as very authoritative. Then I went to the other chieftain and was like, hey, you know, maybe you should volunteer some of your warriors to go to the nearby town, and I'll act as like an envoy and work as guards for them against the other centaurs to show that not all centaurs are the same. And some of you do want to work with civilization. He didn't really, you know, that other faction is not as big on the prophecy, so I'm kind of just a random outsider that's meddling with their affairs and is probably going to get them all killed. Also, I rolled poorly. Taker's Flame, Blasphemous Blade is just ridiculous. Doesn't even try to dodge. And it heals you. Ridiculous. So neither chieftain really was interested in hearing what I had to say and talking to me and all that, blah, blah, blah. So, I went to the more civilized chieftain and was like, okay, what can I do to kind of prove myself that I'm not just some random guy looking to make some sort of profit. You know, I want to help this situation. And he said that he has, you know, one of his young bucks or whatever they call them. I don't know. Who, you know, they're interested in trading with nearby settlements, and one of the nearby settlements is the Magi city of Melamar, which most of them really want nothing to do with. But this young centaur was like, I'm gonna go there, and I'm gonna. Surely there's some enterprising merchants there that are interested in our furs and our pelts and stuff. So I'm gonna go there and sell. But he never returned. So Chieftain asked Garland to go look into it. So Garland, you know, he took the road to Melamar. He stayed at an inn, and in the morning, you know, he asked around the market to see if anyone has seen a centaur, which, you know, they would remember if they saw one. And none of them had. So then, you know, he went towards like the edge of the town where, you know, he probably would have come in and asked anyone around there if they had seen a centaur. No one had. So the conclusion was that this centaur never made it. Never made it into the city. So instead of taking the road, because the centaur wouldn't have taken the road, because the road is pretty close to the other faction. He would have just cut a beeline across the desert. So Garland made sort of a beeline across the desert, the same path that this guy would have taken. And you know, we kind of had to determine a bunch of things about, like, is the centaur still alive? You know, is he in a safe location? So on and so forth. And we ultimately determined that he was barely alive in a safe location in a dangerous place. So he was just kind of hiding in a dangerous spot. And really, the only thing that makes sense then while crossing the desert is that he, like, fell through a hole in the sand into a dungeon. And so we eventually found basically this indentation in the ground in the desert where he probably fell through. And with little other option, because I never bought more rope, I basically just dropped down the hole, took a bit of damage, ended up in a dungeon room, and we found the centaur. Gave him some water. And the easy answer to get out of here was to just use my couple flight totems for me and him to just fly out of here and back to camp. But I wanted to poke around a little bit to see if there was anything else interesting in here, like treasure. So yeah, I poked my head out, went into another room, and went to basically like the entranceway, where the entrance was sealed by sand, but inside were 4 ghouls. And I am a non-combatant, pretty much. I'm like a pacifist at this point. So I couldn't handle 4 ghouls. Next time I level up, whenever that might be, we may want to look into something with a bit more combat potential for magic. But for now, all I have is, like, things I can evade. I could make portals, but in an underground location, it's quite useless. So I sat there for a good few minutes, just trying to think of some conceivable way I could defeat these ghouls. I thought of it a little later, that I could have just distracted them and moved them to a different part of the dungeon and trapped them there. So then that I could dig out the entranceway to get him and I out of there. But still, he had a broken leg, and no matter what, I didn't have a great way of dealing with that outside of flight. So, in the end, it didn't really matter much. But yeah, it would have been nice to find a way to kill all the ghouls. I may have leveled myself up if I had done that. And I could level myself up at any time. But I'm being conservative. I don't want to over-level myself and just be like, yes, I am super powerful. It's like Kramer. I don't even know. I don't remember what episode that was. Where he's like, you know, I like to restrict myself. It's fun. That's basically how I feel. I like to keep myself a little underpowered. But in the end, we used the flight totems and we flew him back. And the chieftain, you know, he does have some money now because they have been trading. If I had done a mission for the other faction, they wouldn't have any currency to give me. They would have paid me in some other way. But he did have some money to pay me, and he also gave me some eagle feathers that I was able to use to make some more flight totems, and I think that was it. I don't think he gave me much else. But obviously then he agreed to send some warriors with me to the settlement. So we went there, and the guards were quite cautious that I was approaching with 2 centaurs. They've gotten raided before. But they fetched the mayor, and the mayor turned out to be quite friendly, quite optimistic, quite passionate, quite lustful, I think is what we rolled. So I think he does want to have sex with one of the centaurs. But that's neither here nor there. That's between him and the centaur. And, yeah, he was willing to take them on as guards and let them stay in the settlement for now. And, he was pleased that not all centaurs were just like vicious savages that were gonna keep raiding his town over and over. So he was happy. And that's where we left off. And I think probably the other faction is going to raid that settlement again. It's going to happen, and they're going to find other centaurs now, like, protecting humans. If anything, that might make the schism worse. So I don't think I should let that be a surprise. I think I should go to the other camp now and say, look, I've taken care of this, is what's happening. And if you go raid that settlement now, you may... you're just going to be making this worse. But I need to come up with sort of a better argument than that. I don't know, I find it interesting. And I think that many groups wouldn't find it interesting. Many groups are not really interested in political, faction sort of negotiations and diplomacy and stuff. They'd probably just say they'd kill them all. But I don't know. So that's where we left off. And we'll see where it goes from there. Over on my family D&D, I fully now have converted them over to Heroes of Adventure. We did proper character creation, which took way longer than it should have. The only feature of Heroes of Adventure that we're not using just yet is the skill die system, where when you do a check, you add D4, D6, D8. That's still just going to be too complicated for all of them. I know it. So for now, it's still just like, if it would be a D4, instead I just told them it's a +2. If it was a D6, it's a +3. Because that's just the averages. When I'm doing monster checks or NPC checks myself, I'm still doing the skill die. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll slowly incorporate it. Like, instead of a +4 to their roll, I'll tell them to roll a D8, which I guess is sort of a big bump up, really. Or I go from +3 to a D8, but I have to slowly introduce them to this system somehow. But other than that, after that, I started running them through Lost Mines of Phandelver. Just straight up, D&D, and I converted monster stats, because goblins are in the Heroes of Adventure bestiary, wolves are in there. Bugbears aren't, but pretty much I just leveled up goblins instead. Because I remember the first time I ever DM'd for them, I ran them through Lost Mines of Phandelver. And that first cave features a bugbear. The average person does not know what a bugbear is. And just the name sounds kind of confusing, I think. So instead, it's just a big muscled goblin. It's a lot easier to understand. But yeah, so I ran them through the first chapter of Lost Mines, and it went pretty well overall. They did try some creative stuff. They do have a goblin traveling with them named Ray, and one of the characters does have a wolf companion. So when they first encountered the cave with all the goblins, they're like, okay, we're gonna send Ray in with the wolf, and he's gonna dress up like one of them and pretend to be, one of their kind. And I don't think they fully thought it all through of like how this interaction was gonna go and what he was gonna find out and all that, but um they sort of thought, I guess, that there was hundreds of goblins in there and he would be able to just slip in, when really it's like 15 of them and they all know each other. So they know that Ray is not one of them and he's wearing their clothes. So, he just kind of was captured and like escorted and tied up. But eventually, they ran in and they cleared out the whole place like D&D characters do. And it went pretty well. I actually did run combat on a grid just because I felt like there's going to be so many combatants now that it's going to get tricky. So just figured we'd try a grid again, see how everyone likes it. And overall, I do feel a grid discourages creativity a lot. And I told them, like, right when we started, I'm like, I know this discourages creativity, but please, like, if you have some creative thoughts about what you want to do on your turn, don't let the grid discourage you. But in the end, yeah, they basically just did standard D&D combat. But if that's what they like, then that's what they like. It's not a very creative group overall. And for me, it's easier to just run and bookkeep. It'll probably get boring again because that's the way it is. But I'll try to come up with some interesting ways to mix combat up, throw some creative environments in there, or different abilities on enemies. I don't know. But yeah, so they cleared it out and they rescued the guy in there, the adventurer, and they're gonna go to Phandalin next. And yeah, not one of them apparently remembered that they had already done this adventure before. So, I mean, it was like 5 years ago, and I think we only did this one cave. But, yeah. What game am I most looking forward to that's coming out? That's a good question. Someone asked me this a few weeks ago. Games I'm excited about. It's probably Space Marine 2. Probably Space Marine 2. But I am excited about Dragon's Dogma 2, Unicorn Overlord coming out this week. Rise of the Ronin could be good. Black Myth Wukong, if that ever comes out, could be pretty good. I mean, the Elden Ring DLC, I don't know if that counts as a game, but I'm quite excited about that. It's probably the most exciting game-related thing coming out. Hellblade 2, maybe? Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's probably about it. Last Ronin TMNT game. I've completely forgotten about that. This was revealed in August? This isn't coming out anytime soon. Is there even any footage of this? Does this game exist? So basically, you're just excited at the concept, really. Because all we have is a teaser trailer. Yeah, I'm way too old to get excited about teaser trailers. Anyways, so that's all that. We've got more Gloomhaven coming this week. Probably going to be dropping some videos on Dragon's Down. Two Brothers Play, we're going to check out Secrets of Grindia. And over on the Exploring series, a video on the Rhino Cannon, followed by a video on the armaments of the Necrons. But for now, my name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks next week.